U.S. President Joe Biden highlighting his efforts for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza in his valedictory speech at the Democratic National Convention. Mr. Biden acknowledged thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside the convention hall in Chicago.
We're working around the clock, my Secretary of State, to prevent a wider war and reunite hostages with their families and surge humanitarian health and food assistance into Gaza now. To end the civilian suffering of the Palestinian people and finally deliver a ceasefire and end this war. Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides.
President Biden also turned emotional, recounting the highlights of his political career.
I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years.
His address capped the opening night of the DNC, where 2016 presidential nominee Hillary Clinton also took to the stage. Both Mr. Biden and Mrs. Clinton did not spare Republican nominee Donald Trump.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history, the first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions.
Former President Barack Obama takes the stage later today, as will his wife, Michelle Obama, and Ms. Harris's husband, that's Doug Emhoff. We go to Simon Marks live for us in Chicago. Simon, just saw a highly galvanized Democratic Party in an emotional send-off for Joe Biden. Today, Barack Obama takes the stage. What can we expect from Mr. Biden's predecessor?
Well, in a word, pivot. I mean, what we're going to see today is the convention moving away from the need that it had to pay tribute and homage to President Joe Biden, who has now left town. He's begun his holiday in California, and to pivot towards a relentless focus on what Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, are going to bring to the ticket and are going to do for 4 more years. So the big guns are being rolled out here tonight, in the form of former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Particularly interesting that Michelle Obama, a late add to the Speaker's roster, is going to address the delegates. She said several months ago, when Joe Biden was still campaigning for re-election, that she was terrified about the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the Oval Office. And many people many observers interpreted that as an indication that she didn't believe that Joe Biden could vanquish Donald Trump. She's now got an opportunity to really put some rocket fuel underneath Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. And all of this now will be focused on the need not just to galvanize Democrats in the arena, they're already galvanized, but to deliver the message to the wider audience, the television and internet audience of voters, that Kamala Harris has the capacity to win this election in November, and policies with which people can identify and relate. That latter part is still going to be the tallest order that Democrats have to engage in here and beyond Chicago.
Simon, of course, you're preempting the question there. Essentially, she's playing to the audience she needs to. The big names, the big guns, as you say, rhetoric is a very big part of the DNC, and we need to see them all perform on rhetoric. But moving beyond that, policies with which the electorate can identify. What are we going to be seeing after the end of this rhetoric?
a massive advertising blitz. Kamala Harris and her team announced over the weekend that as soon as this convention is over, they are going to start spending $370 million on targeted TV advertising and a record sum on targeted online advertising to try and drive her message home, particularly in the crucial battleground states where this election is going to be won or lost. Those 7 states that sometimes vote Democrat, sometimes vote Republican, always decide the outcome of every presidential race. But the protesters who are descending on the convention site, having heard President Biden say last night that they have a point, which is the first time he's actually articulated that message, they want to see concrete change, particularly in the foreign policy section of the manifesto, the platform that is being adopted here as it relates to the Middle East. And the big gap in Kamala Harris's presentation so far is what exactly is she going to do to change policy towards the crisis in the Middle East? We don't know that, and the protesters descending on Chicago don't know that either.
Oh, thanks. And we shall certainly find out what that might be in the days ahead. Simon Marks in Chicago.